name is Chris Carter. This guy over here, that is Nick Wright. We got a fun show for you today. Baker Mayfield continues to wow his teammates. Kevin Durant is big bad. And thank God it's Thursday. That's where we will start. Thursday Night Football on Fox. Great NFC showdown. Vikings heading to L.A. to take on the 3-0 Rams. Kirk Cousins and company looking to improve to 2-1-1 on the season. The always popular 2-1-1. While Jared Goff, Todd Gurley, and the rest of those Rams and the high-powered offense look to cement their place as the best team in the NFL. We will preview this matchup, but not before Rams head coach Sean McVay takes a stab at it. Take a listen.
This week provides a great challenge, going against an excellent team, really sound in all three phases. They have great players. They're very well coached. Team that went deep into the playoffs last year, and they're going to be ready to go, and certainly we have too as well.
They're a great football team. They've played a really high level of football as of late. Playoff team from last year. They're well coached. You have great players. They can beat you a number of ways, and so we understand we've got to play our best football to be able to come out of there with a win.
This is a great way for Fox to kick off NFL Thursday. This is a great one. What do you think is the key to this matchup, Steve?
Well, anytime you're facing a team, if you want to start with the Vikings and their defense, which has been a dominant defense, not last season, but since Zimmer's been there, especially the last 5 seasons, Nick, is very notable as far as they've been a top 5 defense, very consistent, not only against the run, but also against the pass. If you're going to start with the Rams, how are you going to slow down that high-powered offense of them? You got to play great red zone defense, all right, because they're going to get some yards on you. They have too many players. They have run a great system. They confuse the defense an awful lot. So you can expect from the 25-yard line to the opposing 25-yard line, they're going to get some yards. Don't get too frustrated. How many times, if they get into the red zone, say 6 times, can you hold them half the time to field goals? And that's what the Vikings, their challenge will be. If they get there 4 times, can you hold them 2 times to field goals? If you can do that, then the Vikings have a chance. On the other side, the injuries that they have so many. And just like the game I covered last week, the only reason why New Orleans wins that game, because all the injuries, and Atlanta didn't have enough bodies to be able to throw at them. If I'm the Vikings, I go with 3, 4 wide receiver sets. I stress Wade Phillips and that defense out. They're making wholesale substitutions. Both their cornerbacks are going to be out of the game. And there's not enough time for the 5th, the 6th. They're going to have to sign someone off the practice squad, get someone off the street. There's not enough time to prepare for a very, very extensive game plan for these younger and inexperienced players. So not only are they younger and inexperienced, but they're all man. So those are the keys to the Vikings. You got to play really good defense in the red zone, and you got to take advantage of the injuries that the Rams have, because I don't think there will be another game where you're going to face both of the starting cornerbacks where they're not going to play.
And when they're both premier corners, some of the center points of their defense, much like when the Broncos had Aqib Talib and Chris Harris, when Talib was probably a better player than he is now, and now the Rams have Aqib Talib as their secondary corner and Marcus Peters, and both of them going to be out for tonight's game. Big picture-wise, I think a lot of people are going to focus on Kirk Cousins, who had awful ball security last week. It was one of the underrated parts of that game. It's not the interceptions. Yeah, he had 1. But it's the 3 fumbles. I'm going to talk about a guy that could cause those fumbles, because there is one guy that could ruin this game for the Minnesota Vikings, and that guy is Aaron Donald. You said before the year, before the Vikings suffered some offensive line injuries, I know Pat Eflin's going to be back this week, he played a little bit last week, that the Vikings offensive line was the one spot on their team that you had real concerns about when you look at the whole 53-man roster. Well, Aaron Donald is still Aaron Donald. And Aaron Donald up against the guard-center-guard combo of that Vikings offensive line, if they cannot handle him, if he gets pressure on Kirk Cousins up the middle, which then is going to obviously flush him out to the side, which is where Anthony Barr or Kendricks or any of the Donnell Hunter, any of those guys can really damage you. I apologize. Any of the Rams defenders out there on the edge can go out and get you. That's where I think the game can be ruined for the Minnesota Vikings. If Aaron Donald dominates his spot up the middle, which he does so often, and that is the weakest spot on their team. That's an area that they have to prevent that from happening. If they do that, I like their chances on being able to do exactly what Chris is talking about. Take advantage of the young corners. Take advantage of the lesser players on the outside with Diggs and Thielen. But Donald can ruin that entirely himself.
I know we're saying Kirk Cousins has to have a better game than he did last week. This is why you went out and you paid Kirk Cousins. It's for a game like this. It's for a game against what arguably the best team in the NFC against the Rams. You want to see more from Kirk Cousins than what you saw last week, right?
Well, the Vikings as a team and what they were going through, one of their best players, one of their captains in crisis, a serious mental health issue involving other players also. So I'm not going to blame all that on Kirk Cousins. And the reason why, because that's a Vikings team that we hadn't seen. They've been very, very consistent with how they played and the energy for which they played with. That was a different team on the field last week. Now, Kirk Cousins fumbling the football or turning the football over, those are things that Kurt has done, and he's got to be responsible. But as we saw in the Green Bay game, he went tit for tat with Aaron Rodgers. Now, Aaron was hobbled, but when you look at the numbers, they didn't tie that game because of their lack of productivity from their quarterback. Like, Kurt has proven himself within that locker room for people that I talk to. To me, I believe the biggest story of this game is the quarterback on the other side. Because I believe Jared Goff, he can be a superstar. But I believe that everyone else is going to look every other way for the Rams to be able to give them credit besides their quarterback. You can't run this type of offense with just a play caller in Sean McVay. Yes, he deserves a lot of credit for the creativity, but if you don't have someone driving the car like Jared, I don't believe he's a game manager. I believe he's going to be a big-time player, and he's got great players around him, and I believe that's the reason why they're the best team right now in the NFL.
And he is coming off one of the best games of his career against a good Chargers defense. I know that the Chargers don't have Joey Bosa, and they're not going to have him. They still have Melvin Ingram. They still have Derwin James. That is a good defense, and he carved them up. 80% completions, 3 touchdowns, 124 rating. He was my big X factor for this team coming into the year. He has gotten better every single week this year. He was like a A- player week 1 to an A to an A+ in week 3. So I think it's a great point that when we talk about the success of the Rams, they're one of the few teams that the quarterback's almost a supporting actor in the story. We talk about Gurley and all the weapons they have. Goff has been excellent for them, and he can be the X factor in this game. I'm going to bring up one other thing that might seem like a small point, but it could be relevant tonight. I think a 5:20 weekday start in Los Angeles is going to minimize a home field advantage for the Rams early on. I think the fact that this is a weekday game that starts West Coast time at 5:20, I don't think you're going to have the fervent crowd we're used to start nationally televised nightly games. So that's one spot where the Vikings, when they maybe would typically defer if they win the opening kickoff, maybe say, you know what, we'll take the football when the crowd is not at its fevered pitch already because they're getting to their seats. Little things like that. Both of these teams are on their second kicker of the year. Something to watch there. Like, I think these are the 2 best teams in the NFC along with Philadelphia. And so I think all those little things can have major impacts on.
But when you're getting down to the little nitty-gritty like home field advantage and the kickers, you're basically saying these are 2 fairly evenly matched teams. So when you have to go 3, 4, 5 layers down, this is going to be a good game between the 2 of them.
It should be a very good game. It's a game that should live up to the hype. A lot of very, very talented players. The Vikings, I believe, are in a critical part of their season because we see this all the time. Teams with great expectations, teams reach the championship game, and we always make them that next step. The Vikings, we should, because they didn't lose a whole bunch of players, and they added Kirk Cousins, so the expectations were real there in Minnesota. They weren't outrageous. In Los Angeles, what Sean McVay did, we believe he's the new Mike Martz to the NFL. We believe he's here to stay, and he has the type of personnel. And just even what they said with the Khalil Mack trade, we were trying to get Khalil Mack. So they have said outwardly, they have said in-house, they're trying to win a championship. So, yes, we know the NFC has top to bottom stronger teams than the AFC, and these are 2 of the strongest temes in the NFC.
All right, well, we have plenty more on this game a little bit later in the show, but coming up, wait till you hear the...
I did the opening for Fox.
Oh, that's what you were doing the other day. I didn't know that.
Wait till you hear the latest praise for Baker Mayfield. That's next on First Things First.